Hi everyone, Dr. Suneel Dhand, internal medicine physician. Welcome to another video. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video about the woke capture of medicine. Medicine, healthcare, our top institutions, medical journals have been captured over the last few years by a radical extreme ideology. And it is represented by what's become known as wokeism. And it's very sad what's happened to these top bodies in medicine, healthcare leaders, the medical journals, what they choose to focus on. And I actually often go online and I read medical journals, medical publications, supposedly about medical news. And I often do so just for comedy value. When you look at some of the things they are discussing, some of the studies they're talking about, some of the issues that are important to them. And one of these publications, which has been completely captured over the last few years, is MedPage Today. And it is a major online publication. I think they have a print version as well. And they are supposedly about medical news, latest research, etc. Let me share with you a very recent piece that was published. So here we have an article, Mail Order Bride or Very Obese, Bias in Resident Patient Handoffs. Resident handoffs are how doctors in training, known as resident physicians, sign out patients to each other when one doctor might be finishing for the day or finishing a night shift. They sign out what's happened overnight. They talk about the patients that are in the hospital, that they've admitted into the hospital. That's what a handoff is. So let's dive into exactly what they're talking about. Stigmatizing language, words that perpetuated stereotypes or suggested blame or skepticism, was found in 23% of audio recordings of patient handoffs by residents on inpatient general medicine and general pediatrics teams, a cross-sectional study found. As if residents in training don't have enough to focus on, with simply how busy they are, how much there is to learn, now how they talk to each other is being scrutinized by the woke police. In 302 verbal patient handoffs, negative stereotypes were perpetuated at least once in 11% of nightly handoffs. This was a study, it looks like it was done in Chicago. Blaming patients for their symptoms was identified at least once in 13% of handoffs, and casting doubt on patient reports and experiences was identified at least once in 5% of handoffs. Dear oh dear, that doesn't sound good. The woke police will really be onto this. The woke police of healthcare. Overall, 23% of handoffs, 70 of 302, had occurrence of any of the three kinds of biased language that they identified. And then they talk about the different factors involved, including race, negative stereotypes, BMI, being obese. All of these appeared to be associated with negative stereotypes and blame. So what exactly were these terms, this terminology that the woke healthcare police was so concerned about? Perpetuating negative stereotypes was defined as residents repeating negative stories or descriptors heard about the patient or the family. Examples included referring to an immigrant patient as a mail-order bride or another patient as verbally and physically aggressive. Well, I don't know about mail-order brides. I don't think I've seen too many in my career, but being verbally and physically aggressive is something that clinicians, from doctors to nurses, actually have to worry about on a daily basis. It is a real thing. What's wrong with describing people like that when appropriate? Examples of blaming language included attributing a patient's car accident and subsequent spinal fracture to being drunk, or leakage from a patient's ileostomy site as due to being very obese. Well, drunk people do tend to have more accidents, but I guess that's blaming them now for being drunk. And obese people, unfortunately, do have multiple complications in many different organ systems and with many different procedures. But I guess we're not allowed to say that anymore. They're very worried because previous studies evaluated written electronic health records, but now they're examining verbal communication. Well, of course they are. That is the next step in wokeism. So prior to reviewing recordings, the researchers had a dictionary that they used to find examples of stereotyping, blaming, or doubting language. And apparently this is interesting here. Residents were aware of the recordings taking place and had been told ahead of time in an email that the study was analyzing patient handoff quality. So the researchers actually weren't entirely honest with what they were doing. This wasn't about patient handoff quality. This was actually looking at how residents talk to each other. And the researchers call for more studies into this area, of course, because that's just where we want to send healthcare money right now. Crucial and scarce healthcare money should be devoted to these types of studies, according to the researchers. Now, this was actually published because I always advise that when we see a study, we go to the actual publication in the Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics segment. And I'll include a link down below for those of you who are interested in reading the actual article, because this is actually a major medical journal that published this as a research letter, because this is something, of course, we should be focusing on. And I have so many thoughts on this study, I don't know where to begin. Let me begin with this. We face 1,000,001 problems in healthcare. Let's talk about the United States. We have a healthcare system which is crumbling. We have hundreds of thousands, millions of people who can't afford decent healthcare. People who can afford healthcare can only do so just about. So many people, thousands of people, are going bankrupt every single year. Hospitals across the nation don't have enough staff. They don't have enough nurses. They fail to staff adequately with physicians in many specialties. There is a complete crisis in primary care. A lot of people all around the country can't find primary care doctors. Appointment times are squeezed. You have a few minutes with your doctor, and I'm sure these problems echo across the world. And of course, with all of those things going on, the woke police want to focus on how doctors privately talk to each other, because that's just so important at a time when our healthcare system is crumbling. And let's talk about a few of the phrases, some of the terminology that they appear to have issues with. Now, mail order bride, I can't speak for that. I haven't seen many mail order brides in my doctor career, or maybe I have and just didn't know about it. But you have no idea the context that that was said in. Maybe it was something said tongue-in-cheek. Maybe it was doctors joking around with each other. And who would begrudge residents in training a little bit of a sense of humor? But of course, if there's one thing we know about wokeism, because it is, after all, a form of Puritanism, no joking is allowed. No sense of humor whatsoever. It's very offensive to say something that is funny. That is a hallmark of wokeism. As for the other term that they seem to have a major issue with, calling patients verbally and physically aggressive, I can tell you, as I'm sure any doctor can tell you, that this is something that we face in healthcare every single day. Doctors and especially nurses. I have seen nurses during my career put up with things that no nurse, no professional in any specialty, in any area, any industry should have to put up with. Our nurses are heroes, and they deal with physically and verbally aggressive patients all the time. But now, of course, it's totally wrong in this new climate to call patients what they are when they're physically and verbally aggressive. That's assigning blame. That's very offensive to call them that. Let's use a different term. God knows what that term would be. How utterly ludicrous. Now let's think about this. We know the stages of wokeism. Wokeism focuses first and foremost on what's written on the internet, what should be cancelled out in public. Then they focus on what is said in the public arena. Is there something that usually somebody well-known says that might offend one person in every 10 million? Is there something out there that they should be cancelled for? But now we're at the final stage of wokeism, and it's arrived in healthcare. What do doctors say privately to each other? Let's take a video recording where the doctors think we're looking at something else, and let's look at how they're speaking. That's the final stage of the woke police, dealing with your conversations in public. Actually, the final stage might be how you think. If you have a thought, maybe they'll mind read you one day, and if you have an offensive thought, they will come after you. Let me finish with this point that I made a few weeks ago about the core problem with woke lunacy. And that is that these people are focused on these superficial issues, things that don't matter to anyone. Because people who subscribe to this philosophy don't have any intention of ever solving real issues. They will never get to any root cause of any issues. They will never fix anything. But they will focus on changing the language, because maybe if we just change the language, the problem will silently go away. Of course, it will disappear if only we change the language. But of course, that's never what happens. And that's why problems keep getting worse. Because as far as medicine goes, our top institutions, our medical organizations, our top journals are basically infested with this mentality of wokeism that never wants to seriously address root causes and take on the tough challenges that we face. It's all about superficial things that don't affect anyone, that real people don't really care about one jot. That's the level of lunacy and clownery we are at. And every single week, it gets worse. And as I said, I often browse publications nowadays just for comic value to see the level of clownery we have arrived at in a profession profession that is supposed to be very serious indeed, that should be taking on the serious challenges to help our patients. That's all I've got to say about that. Thanks everyone for listening. Let me know your thoughts down below. Check out my online academy, that link is down below, where I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Also check out my Uncensored platform. Hit the like button if you like this video and the bell button for more similar videos in the future. Have a great weekend everyone, and we will talk again very soon.